So today let's compare the best value iPhones in Apple's range right now, because for most consumers who don't need the fancy pros, you're probably thinking, should I buy the iPhone 13 or spend the extra on the iPhone 15? Also, there may be consumers who might want to upgrade to the 15 from the 13, and so let's compare these devices. Beginning with the design, the iPhone 13 for the most part looks like every standard iPhone we've had for the last few years, with the flat sides and the notch. But the 15 does change up a few things visually. You now have rounded corners that honestly don't make a huge difference, but yes, it is slightly more comfy in the hand. But more importantly, we have thinner bezels with the dynamic island and also a matte finish on the back of the device. And by the way, would like to remind you guys, like this video and subscribe for more content like this. It would be appreciated. Now, I know I did criticize the island back when it released with the 14 Pro, and it's still not a must-have feature by any means, but I can't lie, Apple is baking in some really cool animations with the island, and I'm a sucker for really snazzy animations. I feel like it's slowly being further integrated into iOS, and so I could live with a notch right now. It's gonna continue becoming very dated as developers play around with the island for their applications. Do remember last year only the pros had this, but with the mainstream iPhone now gaining the island as well, I'm sure more developers are now going to be incentivized to build additional features that are specifically made for the fancy island. And so yes, I'm excited about the future of this, and not so much for the static peninsula on the 13. Also, while those who use the case probably won't care about this, oh my god, does a silky matte finish on the back of the regular 15s feels so bloody good, especially compared to how much of a fingerprint magnet the old regular phones used to be. This very much is a welcome change, guys. Talking about aesthetic changes, I will say the iPhone 13 actually has the better colors. While yes, I did absolutely despise Midnight and Starlight, and I'm glad those are finally gone, it's also a little sad we only have a standard black on the 15, and other classic colors like white and product red are nowhere to be seen. Also, as a fan of saturated punchy colors, I generally prefer the shades the iPhone 13 offers, but at the end of the day, they're just colors. You're gonna cover this phone with a case anyways, so I guess it doesn't matter that much. And last but not least, we have a new port on iPhone 15, which is Type-C. Yes, what a revolutionary upgrade. After many years of consumers begging Apple to include this, they were gracious enough to finally listen to us, and they totally weren't forced by a government to include this. But jokes aside, I'm sure this alone is going to be a massive reason to get the 15, because USB-C is common on Macs, iPads, even Android devices, and so having one port to charge all your devices is pretty clutch. However, there is another perspective to consider, because for those who have tons of existing Lightning accessories, it is going to be kind of annoying for them to, of course, switch to a new port and all their existing accessories become completely redundant, and so I could see why someone gets the 13 instead for Lightning, though I admit that's a very small minority. Anyways, materials wise, these phones are identical with the same ceramic shield display that, yes, is very strong, but also scratches way too easily, so get yourself a screen guard. And also you have aluminium on the sides that dents pretty easily, to be honest, but is thankfully lightweight. Both are also IP68 rated, so if you do get your phone a little wet for whatever reason, you'll have no issues. Moving on to the display, we once again have some pretty nice changes. So as I said before, the display is slightly larger on the 15 because of slimmer bezels. Now it doesn't make a huge difference because at the end of the day, both are 6.1 inches, but you also have the island that gives the phone a nice visual refresh. But that's not the major upgrade, guys. No, who cares about slightly thinner bezels when you get 1000 nits of brightness for typical use, 1600 nits for HDR content, and a whopping 2000 nits of brightness when outdoors. The brightness upgrade is a game changer, guys. We had this on the 14 Pros last year, and it finally makes these phones viewable in sunlight. Now yes, because I live in the UK, we only get sunlight once or twice a year, but occasionally, when there is a bit of sun, the higher brightness coming into my eyes definitely is quite clutch. Performance-wise, we do have the new A16 Bionic in the iPhone 15, which is actually not that new because it's the exact same SoC from the 14 Pros. I kinda hate this new trend of the regular phones getting last year's chip, but anyways, Yes, this is an upgrade over the A15 in the iPhone 13. Also remember, the 13 has a binned version of the A15 with one fewer GPU core, but let's be honest guys, at the end of the day, I think you're not going to see much of a difference. I think because of the great optimization with iOS, you could probably use an iPhone 12 alongside the 15, and in terms of regular usage, you likely won't be able to tell much of a difference. iPhones for the last few years have all had great performance. Now obviously there will be some edge cases. If you love yourself some Genshin Impact, you may notice the additional performance gains, but the games I play are Subway Surf and 8-Ball Pool, which runs basically on any device. So yes, I see no huge difference. iPhone 13 does have 4 gigs of RAM compared to 6 gigs on the 15, and I do occasionally notice the additional RAM when multitasking on the device, but 4 gigs definitely is not a deal breaker. This is not some crappy Android phone that has poor RAM management. 4 gigs on iPhones are plenty fine. Moving to the camera, once again, we do have some big changes here because I would say in every aspect of the camera experience, the 15 does give you substantial improvements. Beginning with the main lens, it's 48 megapixels, and that is a lot of pickles. Though of course the shots have been down to 24 megapixels. However, even then for the pixel peepers, you will notice the 15 does produce crispier shots that have more detail, but that's not the main change I care about. The reason I was so excited for this upgrade was because this allows for the 2x crop we saw with the 14 Pro. Now Apple does kind of falsely advertise this as a 2x telephoto when it's not really a separate sensor, but anyways, that's a little cheeky Timothy, but at the same time, it is actually as good as a dedicated telephoto. So yes, if you're going to be zooming into things pretty often, you have to get the 15. You also get Photonic Engine from iPhone 14, and that's just fancy jargon for extra detail on your photos. Cinematic mode also comes in 4K on the 15, whereas it's got a 1080p cap on iPhone 13. And also there's action mode, which comes in handy if you're chasing a dog for whatever reason. Smart HDR5 is another big upgrade in my opinion, because we've all been complaining for a while Smart HDR4 on the 14 and 13 did produce overprocessed photos that would sometimes look like hot garbage. I did often notice skies would be blown out, and so I'm glad to see less of that with the 15. Now unfortunately, the ultra-wide is exactly the same on the 15, so you get no macro support here like you do on the Pros, and actually the regular phones have had the same ultra-wide since the iPhone 11, which was the phone that first came with the ultra-wide. So yes, it does massively fall behind newer Pro phones, but if you do give it enough light, it can produce decent shots. The front-facing camera thankfully is a big step up from the iPhone 13 because this has the same autofocus tech from last year's 14s. I'm actually surprised every iPhone before the 14 did not have autofocus for the selfie lens, but it does make a big difference, and so selfies are much better here on the 15. Video-wise, both produce very good footage. iPhones are kind of the king in this aspect, and really the main advantage with the 15 is the 2x option I previously mentioned. It's way better for zooming into things, and so yes, if you care about that, get the 15. Also something I've quickly come to appreciate are next-gen portraits. Now the portrait mode itself isn't radically different, it is slightly better, but the big upgrade is that the 15 automatically collects the data needed for portrait modes, and so you can now turn most photos into portrait in post. That is super clutch because I'm usually too indecisive to actually switch to portrait modes, and so I now get the best of both worlds, and that I did miss not having on the 13. Now the iPhone 15 does have a slightly newer modem, and yes, generally I've seen slightly better Wi-Fi and 5G performance on the newer device, but honestly at the end of the day guys, both are rock solid in this aspect. You do get the YouTube chip in the 15, which does come in handy for some new features, like precision finding for Find My Friends. You also get Bluetooth 5.3 instead of 5.0 on the 13, but to be honest, I've noticed no real difference. And Wi-Fi 6 is standard across these devices, so yes, both of these are great connectivity wise. Also, I do want to mention that if you want the peace of mind, iPhone 15 does offer emergency SOS via satellite and crash detection, which I admit are nice to have features. Apple low-key blackmails you in the ad saying, hey, if you don't buy the new iPhone 15 with emergency SOS, you will die. So spend money right now. Now, if you're wondering if Face ID is any faster because of the island, no, that's not the case. Both are very similar in this aspect, and the same goes for the speakers and mics, and here's a comparison for you guys. And here's a quick mic test on the iPhone 13. Let me know how this sounds. And here's a quick mic test on the iPhone 15. Finally, coming to battery life, Apple on their site does say the 15 has now a better endurance compared to the 13 across the board. But honestly, in terms of real life usage, I'm not seeing a huge difference. And that's not a massive issue, to be fair, because the 13 was rock solid in my experience. I was getting 7 to 8 hours of screen on time, and the 15 does match that, so yes, battery wise, you guys should be set. And if you were hoping the fancy Type-C port was going to give us better charging speeds, no, that's not the case. They both charge up to 50% in 30 minutes, and if I'm being honest, I'm not too fussed about the lack of charging speed upgrades because these phones do get you through the day pretty easily, and so you're likely going to be charging these overnight anyways, where you don't need insane 100-watt charging speeds. Both also have MagSafe, so of course, you can use that instead if you wish. So that's all the main differences, guys. And well, let's begin with the first set of consumers who are debating between the iPhone 13 and the 15 as their next iPhone. And honestly, as much as this might sound like a cop-out answer, I really have to say this depends on your use case. Yes, the 13 does miss out on some of those newer features, but it's still a very solid device and fits the bill for most consumers. Also consider the fact you can find this for even less on Apple's refurbished sites. And so yes, I can see why one gets that over the 15 when there's gonna be a massive saving. However, there are reasons to get the 15 as well, because this being the new device means it's more feature-proof, and it's feature-proof in two crucial aspects. You have USB-C, which eventually is going to become the de facto standards, and so 3 to 4 years down the line when Lightning disappears for good, you're going to be set with your Type-C iPhone, but also the island's very much becoming a crucial part of the iPhone experience. I'm sure Apple and developers are going to be giving us even more features involving the island with new versions of iOS. Now ultimately, don't stretch yourself too thin and justify the premium for the 15. If $200 extra for the 15 sounds like a lot to you, then by all means, stick with the 13, but if you can comfortably afford and justify the higher cost, you are going to appreciate the upgrades with the 15 in my opinion. Now if you do have an iPhone 13 right now, I can see the upgrade to the 15 being worth it. However, again, if you're unsure about the upgrade, then by all means keep waiting for a newer iPhone, because the iPhone 13 in 2023 is a very solid device and should be for the next few years. But if you do have the cash to splurge, or you can take advantage of a good trade-in deal, or of course your battery health has gone down the drain and you'd rather get a new phone instead, then yes, go with the 15, it's a good upgrade. Anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comments, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and thank you for watching.